Jennifer Griffin with the Clinton campaign in Chappaqua. Jennifer, thank you. One topic, at least one candidate will surely mention tomorrow night, Hillary Clinton's emails and the continuing concerns about how she and her team handled classified information. A Friday night document dump by the FBI and news of immunity deals has offered new info to be digested on the now closed investigation. Joining me from Greenville, South Carolina is House Oversight Committee member Trey Gowdy. Congressman, thanks for being here.
Yes, sir.
I want to get your thoughts on these developing stories, and then we'll talk about the debate tomorrow night. First of all, we get this document dump on Friday night. Tons of different pieces of the different interviews the FBI conducted. One of them, Brian Pagliano. This is the IT guy who handled the server for Hillary Clinton. And he essentially says that there was some sort of cover-up. And that he mentioned this. Take a listen to questioning of Robbie Mook today.
We learned from the FBI that an IT contractor managing Hillary Clinton's private email server made reference to the, quote, Hillary cover-up operation in a work ticket. This IT worker certainly sounded like he thought he was covering something up, no?
FBI Director Comey came out and said to the world that there was no case here, that they did not have evidence of wrongdoing on Hillary's part.
So what's the Hillary cover-up operation that the IT worker was referring to?
Well, but this is the perfect example of what's going on here. The Republicans in the House side are selectively leaking documents for the purpose of making Hillary look bad.
Congressman, your reaction to all this?
Well, there was a cover-up, and the folks who aided and abetted that cover-up is the State Department. I mean, keep in mind, Brett, she had this arrangement for the entire time she was Secretary of the State. Then she kept her emails for almost 2 years, and it was only because a congressional committee would not go away that the State Department bothered to ask her to return the public record. And then that's when it gets interesting. The conversations between Cheryl Mills and Patrick Kennedy, and then Platte River, and then we send a subpoena, and Platte River destroys documents after the subpoena. The State Department, which is supposed to be apolitical, not interested in the next presidential election, has been covering for Hillary Clinton since she left office.
Well, what about the Department of Justice offering this at least partial immunity, but immunity through the FBI to 5 different people, one of them, Cheryl Mills, the former chief of staff of Hillary Clinton? For a lot of people who looked at this, they just don't get that.
Yeah, and I would be one of them who don't get it for a couple of reasons. Number one, if you think that there is evidence that is relevant to an investigation on a piece of physical property, you use a subpoena, a grand jury subpoena. You don't strike an immunity agreement with the computer. You go get the computer. Her lawyer, Beth Wilkinson, who, by the way, represents both Heather Samuelson and Cheryl Mills, she's on record as saying the Department of Justice assured me my clients did nothing wrong. Well, people who've done nothing wrong typically don't ask for immunity. So my question would be, immunity from what? What was it that you were worried about the FBI finding on those computers? And, Brett, I'll tell you what I think it is. She had classified information on those computers. So you offer immunity to Cheryl Mills, who has classified information on her computer. How can you possibly then prosecute Hillary Clinton for having classified information on her computer? You couldn't do it.
So are you saying, Congressman, that there was no intention at the beginning to prosecute Hillary Clinton, no matter what happened?
Well, I don't want to malign the FBI, but I can tell you this. I have been underwhelmed by an agency that I once had tremendous respect for, and it's the Department of Justice who gives out immunity agreements, not the FBI. The FBI doesn't immunize anyone. But the Department of Justice, the same department that is headed by someone who met on a tarmac for half an hour to discuss golf and grandkids with a potential witness, to say nothing about being the spouse of a target, a potential witness in an investigation. She recuses herself. Someone in the Department of Justice had to decide to pass out these immunity agreements. And I see the get out of jail free cards, Brett. What I don't see is the jail. usually you strike immunity agreements to further a prosecution. There is no prosecution. It's just 5 get-out-of-jail-free cards.
All right, I want to ask you about the president, and he factors into this document dump. Here's what he said back in March 7th.
Mr. President, when did you first learn that Hillary Clinton used an email system outside the U.S. government for official business while she was Secretary of State?
At the same time, everybody else learned it through news reports.
Now, there's an email in this document dump that Uma Abedin notes that the president could only receive emails from approved addresses. She recounted when Clinton changed her primary email address, they had to notify the White House so Clinton's emails would not be rejected by the server. Uma Abedin, was not sure how often Clinton emailed the president. Abedin was shown an email chain dated June 28, 2012 with the subject regarding congratulations. Abedin did not recognize the name of the sender. Once informed that the sender's name is believed to be a pseudonym used by the president, Abedin exclaimed, "How is this not classified?" Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Brad, I read that a couple of weeks ago when I read the FBI's file. This is about the 4th or 5th time the president has said something, that he learned something from a media report, whether it was the IRS targeting scandal or whether it's this. He's got really poor people staffing him if he has to rely on you and others in the media to tell him that Hillary Clinton was using her own private email. He emailed with her. It wasn't just once. It was more than once. And the other defense I've heard is, well, there was the letter H. Well, that's fine, but what you didn't see is state.gov. And that's what you ought to see if you're getting an official email. The one question that's never been asked of Secretary Clinton that I would love to ask if I were in your line of work is, would you have had this arrangement had you beat President Obama? Had you won in 2008?
Yeah. Now, that brings me to my last point. This debate tomorrow night, she likely will get asked some kind of question like this, we would think. If not, it'll be raised by Donald Trump. You've evolved on Donald Trump. You supported Marco Rubio. You said Donald Trump didn't have specifics back in February. Does he have specifics now? And what do you think about tomorrow night?
He has some specifics, but, you know, Brett, this is really not a policy presidential race. This is about the anger and frustration that my fellow Americans feel with those of us who have been in politics, and Secretary Clinton's been in it for a long time. The way I look at it, I was a Marco Rubio supporter, so I'll quote him. The choice is between someone I don't agree with on everything or someone I don't agree with on anything. And between the two, I'm going to pick the person I don't agree with on everything.
Congressman Gowdy, thanks for the time.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Let's get some reaction and a look ahead to tomorrow night with syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer, who joins us now from Washington. Charles, your thoughts?
Well, look, I think Trey Gowdy is absolutely right. The more you look at these document dumps, the more you look at the things that were done, the granting of immunity. And as Gowdy explains, there was no need for that. All you had to do was issue a subpoena. And since it came from the Department of Justice, it seems to me very clear that the answer to your question, which Gowdy was a little bit hesitant to go into, was that, yes, it was understood from the beginning by the Department of Justice and the White House that this person was going to be the Democratic nominee, that the legacy of the president was going to hang on her winning re-election and that and that there was no way they were going to prosecute her, and whatever had to be done would be done along the way. My view is that Comey found himself in a position where he's not a stupid man. He understood that was the setting for the whole play. And his job, I think, he felt, now I'm imputing this to him, was to come out with his reputation reasonably intact by laying out the indictment while in the end not indicting. I don't know that it was a happy compromise, but that looks to me to be what actually happened.
All right, so we are 26 hours and 45 minutes away from this thing starting here at Hofstra. There's been a lot of prognostication about which Donald Trump shows up, whether Hillary Clinton tries to run circles around him in policy. What do you think heading up to this, and who's under more pressure?
Well, it seems to me the context for this debate is that we have the two most unpopular candidates in modern American history, and that the bar for each is extremely low. For her goal is to come out as reasonably likable, to quote a phrase that Barack Obama used in the 2009 election. For him, for Donald Trump, his job is to come out as reasonably unscary. Now, that's not exactly a hard task for regular folks, but that is the objective, I think, for these two candidates. For Trump, he's got the higher upside because he is trailing. It's very close, but he is trailing. He needs to get something moving here to continue the momentum he has, because if he stalls and the election's held today, he would lose. But on the other hand, since she has been running a relentlessly negative campaign from sea to shining sea, all he has to do is to show that he's not the monster he's portrayed as, and he wins. So you show up and act normal, and you win. That shouldn't be a difficult task.
Charles, as always, thank you. Well, who do you think is under more pressure in the debate tomorrow? Let me know on Twitter @BrettBaer. You can use the hashtag #SpecialReport. Up next, Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel announces a plan to try to clean up crime in the Windy City.